Larry, your distinctly masculine outlook on life, and Sue, your feminine way of looking at things, your capacities to love and be loved. In these and many other ways, you each acquire a background, so that when you first met, you were probably farther apart, probably more distinct individuals than when you were born.
But I don't want to marry a girl like me. I want to marry a man like him.
There's not much that is normal about my family.
My family is, well, there's my mom and my dad, Michael and Michelle.
There's me. I got 2 brothers and a sister.
So my grandfather, he had Pentecostal preacher parents, right? So they scared him, and he was like a cool, like, jazzy dude in the 50s.
Well, it started out with Mommy and Daddy. That didn't last too long.
And they were divorced when I was 2 years old. My dad is married to a woman named Tracy Patterson, who's my stepmother.
And so the 4 of us, we were all born by our same mother and father, Patsy and John. They were married for, I think, 11 years.
So he divorced his first wife and had a kid with this wife. But then she's this crazy lady, so he divorced her and married another woman that had 2 kids.
My parents divorced when I was, I think, about 8 years old, 8 or 9 years old.
My dad remarried a few years later, and my mom, she remarried pretty soon thereafter, within the next year, to Kate.
Lived with my mom, and then after maybe a year or 2, her partner moved in, and I grew up with my mom and her partner.
And my mom is in a partnership with a woman named Anna Torres.
Mom never got married, and then she came out when I was about, I want to say, 4, maybe 5.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking. I honestly don't remember that time of my life that clearly.
"75 years in the story of the family as a social institution is very short indeed. And yet, in that time, the pattern of family life in America has undergone radical changes.
I think I was 9 or 10 years old. I think I was in the 4th grade, so I was probably 10. And we were folding laundry, and I remember we were getting a new roommate. I remember my mom was like, "So we're getting a new roommate, Anna," but she's more than just a roommate, we're together, and I was kind of like, okay. I didn't really think about it, I guess, just because I didn't really think that it was anything to think about.
I don't know if I realized that my mom and Kate were together, you know, right off the bat, but within the next year, my life, she was a pretty big part of my life.
I was really young when she came out, and I actually knew that she was gay before. I don't know how I knew, but I knew before she told me that she was divorcing my father and that she was different. And she sat me down at the kitchen table, and gave me this spiel about you know, how we love people even when they're different. She went through, you know, the kind of the stereotypical differences that we talk about. We talk about acceptance and diversity, and then she said, she kind of paused, and I said, "Like gay people?"
You know, it was fun. It was just like another person in our life, like another person there to support us. And
everything at first it was a big secret, you know. I mean, because it's the 80s, you know, and still, you know, especially right when AIDS came in too, you know, it got even worse.
I thought that if you were gay, it meant that you were going to get AIDS, which is really an interesting, like, kind of telling of that time and media perceptions of gay people, and that I just had picked up, not from my mother, but from general culture, that AIDS was kind of synonymous with gay. And so I was really confused about why my mom would want to have AIDS, because it was kind of traumatic as a little kid, not understanding the connections or the disconnects between being gay and having AIDS.
Look looking for my shit?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm unorganized. I'm an Aquarius. I don't know if that means that you're unorganized, but I don't know. It was definitely a new chapter in our life. It was like one chapter had ended and this was kind of the new chapter. And at first I didn't really think that much of like that my mom was like now a lesbian or anything until I think probably the 6th grade. And I remember one of my friends was really mad at me. It was my best friend. There's a Hess. She was mad at me and she told all my friends my mom was a lesbian. And I was like, nuh-uh, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. And like that was the first time that I really remember being like, oh, that's not okay. Or like there's something wrong with that.
One of my first memories was like where I really realized it. She used to have like a bookshelf with like all her, lesbian books and for stuff, like the same sex and lesbian minds and lesbian this and I remember friends come over and stuff like this, and we were just getting to the age where it kind of meant something. You knew faggot was a bad word. You're like 6 or 7. And they all came over and they saw these books and they started pulling them off the shelves and like, oh, your mom's a lesbian, your mom's gay, blah, blah, blah. Look at all these books and just like, it was like one of those first times where you're like, wow, this is something very different, I'm not like other kids or,
We had this teacher who was gay. There was one kid who we were both in the back of the classroom kind of just goofing off and stuff, and he was just like talking shit, just kind of saying nasty things, and just got to a point where I was just kind of disgusted. And then like I finally said something to him in a way that was, instead of defending one side, I was kind of attacking him. But we got up in the classroom, like started pushing each other and stuff, and the teacher came and broke it up. And that was also a time where I realized that like not everybody, has a lesbian mom.
Popularity. What is it made of? How does a person get to be popular with lots of people and have a few close friends too? Let's watch and see what makes people like one person and not another.
It was my sophomore year in high school. We were having this Martin Luther King Day assembly. We would have these assemblies in our gym, and people were doing all different kinds of things. And one girl who went to my high school, she said this speech, and it was like her coming out speech. It was a huge deal. It was like there was some people that were booing her. There were some people that were just like right on with her, People weren't like cheering or anything, but like there were some people that were being assholes about it. I was in drama class and I went back to class, and my friend Megan at the time, her mom was lesbian as well, and like I knew this, and we never talked about it, but I just like broke down and started crying. It was like all this pressure, and it was like the first time that anyone had like really talked about it in my school. It was like I had to have that emotional response for me to understand how I like felt about the whole thing, and just how kind of like suffocating it felt as I was growing up to like have a bunch of just like homophobes around me all the time.
I just basically remember like the environment, the social climate not being one of acceptance, so people were kind of mean. But I guess that's kind of the way it is in most schools.
I don't know why they let people like him go to our school anyway. And I'm not the only one. My folks don't like it a bit.
Boy, my dad made it plain I wasn't to associate with him. How you gonna keep...
I don't know, I felt like I was sort of like, that's the gay kids, whatever, kind of written off. My mom was really afraid for me and for her in my elementary school,
We did not grow up in a very tolerant town. And I don't want to reaffirm the connections between, like small town and closed-mindedness, but there weren't, I didn't have access to like GLBT centers or any kind of community center in that kind of way. There was no connection with the queer community that my mother had growing up, and no connection that I had.
There weren't really like many other kids, or like really any other kids that I knew of. I mean, there were around. Like we all kind of knew who each other were, whose kids had like gay parents or something like that. But like no one would really talk about it.
For me and for high school, I think it was more kind of like, it's cool, your mom's a lesbian, you're more alternative. That makes you even cooler. And
I personally never really received like that much hatred or like, people making fun of me because of my family. But there were times that it would really hit me hard when I would see someone else do it to another student. And like that would just like really tick me off. And there were some times that I kind of just pushed it aside and ignored it. And there were some times that I just would go off on the person.
I didn't want to say it because of the teasing, I mean, that first memory with the books, I mean, that, you don't want to deal with that. And so she probably, remember, she pulled all the books off the shelf or whatever, too. I had had enough with it that I decided that I don't care. You know what I mean? It's my mom. I love my mom. She takes care of me. And if anyone wants to say something about it, well, then they have to speak to me.
That was not really something I ever tolerated. I didn't, I wasn't friends with the kids that picked on the other kids, and I wasn't, that was just always something I tried to stay clear of.
Sometimes I would like totally open up the person's head and be like, yo, like what you just said to them, like, hurts me, but it hurts me because I love people, because I love my family, because I love my friends, who are who they are.
We can talk our troubles out this way. We're really growing up. We're growing together. Sure helps a lot when you can bring things out in the open, talk them out together.
Language affects all of us very strongly, no matter how you identify.
Like, I mean, I still catch myself saying some of the things that, that are commonplace, you hear, like, especially, like, sometimes I'll be like, that's gay.
I remember the first time I can really remember hearing the popularity of the insult of that's gay was in 4th grade. It made me feel pretty uncomfortable, and I actually remember at one point trying to not be so much of an outsider. I remember there was one day I used gay as an insult, and I still feel really guilty about it now. And my kid brother, who tries to keep me honest, he's a really great guy, called me out on it and was like, Mom says not to use words like that in front of everyone, and I was kind of embarrassed, and then I never used it again.
It really definitely depends on how it's being used. There's a difference between like someone who's gay saying that's gay and then someone who's like straight and just really homophobic saying that, and in the way where it means being stupid.
In high school, boys call shit gay, that's gay, you're gay, this is gay. But I just sort of, selectively ignored it.
And now I understand that it has come, made a full circle in the sense that, like, you can use it as a term for empowerment, or you can, use it to, like, greet one of your peers, like, in a respectful way. But I still choose, I would never do that. I still choose not to do that.
I never used to say that when I was in high school. I never ever, like, used that as, like, any kind of disrespectful way, any kind of, like, put down or anything like that, because I was just, like, that pissed me off.
When I see other people doing it, it's hard for me not to judge them, but I do, I do sometimes, and I think it makes them look ignorant.
Mike isn't troubled by the fact that Virginia still has her own work to do once in a while. They've long since stopped worrying about who's breadwinner and who's housemaker. Mike's dignity is much more flexible since he discovered that a wet baby loves whoever changes her, male or female.
You guys being nuts. Come here, Bears. Cobras. Kobe, come here. Kobe, come here, buddy. There's, you have to be in society, right? And men do these things, and there's social expectations and things that guys want to do that you would want to do as a guy, hanging out with other guys, doing guy things. I like to do guy things.
So I've always had this idea, that it's okay to be feminine or effeminate. I was really, really femme when I was younger.
Context can create an identity that you don't necessarily choose. Typically, when we understand a woman, we understand it as in relation to a man. And seeing a household that didn't have a male head of the household was really important for me.
I come from a family, like, where all the women, they run it. I mean, it's all of them running it. All the men die real young. Not real young, but before the women do, and they kind of like take these backstage roles where the women, I think, are really like on the forefront.
Like, I don't like sports at all. I don't care. It's like a weird thing. But I'm very accepted by a lot of guys, you know what I mean?
We're kind of confused, like, oh, I was supposed to do this, but I'm not supposed to do that because I'm a boy or something.
But I have a lot of things that, you know, I like house music, which is, to most straight men, very gay music.
I think that having a queer mother definitely impacted my understandings of gender.
My willingness to dialogue about sexuality and sexual orientation is definitely affected by me growing up in a queer home.
Like, she wasn't teaching me that, like, you should challenge these roles and then be lesbian, or you should challenge these roles and be queer. It was like, you should just challenge these roles for, like, yourself and not really how you, well, yes, how you relate to other people as well.
I think I did understand that there are more options to being a woman or to being who I am than the two that are presented for me.
And if you're not just going along with the stereotypes, if you're, you know, kind of creating like a new idea of what it means to be a man or what it means to be a woman, then say it, stand up for it.
I like muscle cars. Yeah.
Homosexuals, lesbians. This moral decay weakens our resistance to the onslaught of the communist masters of deceit.
Okay, so I got this tattoo on my third co-op when I was in Oakland, California, and it's kind of a tribute to my mom. My mom's favorite color is purple, and her favorite flower is a rose, so I got purple roses.
I still think I have a lot to understand about the way that gender and sexuality are understood. I didn't realize so much that there was a separation between gender and sexuality, that if you were like a more masculine woman, you were a dyke, you know, you were gay, you were a lesbian.
I think it's interesting, all the social dynamics that revolve around sexuality and sexual orientation.
I knew it was taboo, but I didn't see, you know, she wasn't doing anything crazy. Homosexuals are classified as, you know, absolute whore, pedophile, deviant, paganistic, you know, lusty hedonists, you know what I mean? Constantly looking for sex, you know. You know, disco dancing sex freaks, you know. They hate the Amish too, lesbians, I've heard.
It definitely has had an effect on sexuality and how I think about that and how I think of, like, what is a queer relationship, or what does it mean to be a lesbian, what does it mean to be straight. I felt like that was just like very serious, or like sexuality was very serious, because I felt how much of an impact it could have.
Straight people never have to prove where their straightness comes from. It's something that's taken as inherited.
The couple still need kid gloves from time to time, but they figured out ways to handle ticklish situations. Virginia's apron, when it's worn astern, means, take it easy, I need tender love and care tonight. And Mike's got his own danger signals. His spinning hat says it's one of those days when a fella needs a friend.
This whole idea of sex, what is sex? And is it solely, you know, some kind of penetration, or is it, you know, like a feeling that you have? Is it like emotions that you feel, you know? And I feel like people in the queer community kind of challenge that in a lot of really positive ways.
Being outside of the norm, not necessarily as bad, but like can cause a lot of, like, I guess, hardship.
She wasn't doing anything crazy, or no, wasn't cutting the heads off chickens, or, you know, didn't have a clown suit and an ice cream truck. So.
In the American family of the past, religion played an important role in holding the family together as an institution. It was not exclusively an individual experience. The family participated in it as a group, in church and at home too.
I remember one time I asked my granny, I was like, if, who were God's parents? Like, where did God come from? And she was like, don't ask that. Like, don't just, like, what's wrong with you? Like, that's just rude. And I was like, well, then why should I even listen to that if you don't have an answer for me?
I was raised Jewish in this way where it was almost by default. My mother was adopted, and she was adopted by a Jewish couple, and she was raised very strictly Jewish.
I was raised primarily like Catholic Christian for the most part. My dad's side of the family is really Catholic.
I don't think it really, like for spirituality,
like we were not taught religion. I guess we were taught spirituality and like to like believe in like the powers that be or whatever. She was very much not about religion because she did think it was very controlling and thought that like it was very oppressive in many ways.
And at one point, there were members of my dad's family that didn't even want to acknowledge the fact that my parents wanted a divorce. And my uncle, my dad's oldest brother, he wrote to my mom this 7-page, basically hate note of how she's wrong for getting divorced, how she's wrong for being gay, how she's going to hell, how I'm going to hell because I'm her son, and my brothers and sisters and our kids for 7 generations are going to burn in hell. But yeah, none of us were really that comfortable around him just because his religious perspective or social perspective was so different, and his realities were so different than ours.
Yeah, the school system that I was in, I remember specifically one time I was riding the bus home from school, and someone told me that I was responsible for killing Jesus, and then proceeded to punch me in the head. So the school environment that I grew up in was not really the best.
It's like a reason, gives people a reason to take sides, it seems like, especially America, we really like our teams. I don't know, it almost seems like it becomes like a vassal of hate, like opposite of what religion is supposed to be about.
We never really expressed hate towards him like he did to us and to our mom. He wrote our family a hate note, and we went to him and shook his hand and said, "Hi, Uncle Dave." He called me Alex, even though my name's Peter. I just take it with a grain of salt. It's just like, whatever. I can't let one person's ignorance, stop me from enjoying my life. And stop me from showing that I love my family for who they are.
It's just, I don't know, it's just manipulative. And I think that someone should just have a relationship, they should listen to what they hear in their heart, you know what I mean? And that's what I try and do, is follow my heart a little bit. I know it sounds maybe hokey, but I know when I shouldn't be doing something.
It's frustrating because then I feel like my identity is a non-identity as far as religion goes. And I think that has carried over, where I don't feel like I have a religion.
Rosemary is entertaining a suitor in the parlor. Courtship in the 1880s had stricter rules than today. Activities connected with the church, and especially Wednesday evening prayer meeting, gave courting couples their opportunities to meet.
Well, ever since I was a little girl, I always wanted a wedding. Real bad. Oh my God. I wanted a wedding cake and a wedding dress. And all those things. I always thought, I was always really into the idea of marriage, actually. Since I was really little, I was like, this is so cool. You get to have this big party, and like, it has a lot of meaning to it. When I was in high school, I babysat for this family, and the mom in the family asked me, when she found out that my mom was a lesbian, somehow, she told me that she had gone and see Passion of the Christ, and then she told me that she asked me about gay marriage, and she was like, well, if gay people can marry, then, maybe that means that, like, fathers can start marrying their daughters. And well, I don't think that that is really necessarily comparable, and if you allow gay people to marry, doesn't mean that, like, all of a sudden you're opening up the floodgates and, all these people are going to, then everything will be okay. It's like, I think I said that the reason it was different was because the power was different. Like, the power dynamic between, like, a father and a daughter is a lot different than, like, two people that are coming together.
I remember Kate Palacha, a member of our community, was the priestess, that wed them. Even though it wasn't, a legal marriage, it wasn't official on the books or whatever, they did it, you know, to make themselves feel good, and they did it, you know, as a celebration for our family and our community. And
they love each other. They're married, you know, they share a bank account and carpool in cars and have dogs together and go on vacations and pack picnic baskets and go on little retreats and have beds and breakfasts. And they're Wiccans, so it's, you know, they don't care about this socially structured religious nonsense, you know what I mean?
I think there's a lot of problems with gay marriage being on the forefront of the gay rights movement. That's not something that's that useful. I just think that I do recognize that there are a lot of benefits to that. Health insurance, being able to have, you know, some influence or some presence if your partner's in the hospital, things that happen with, you know, deaths when loved ones pass away. So I definitely recognize that it's something that is a really important issue for many people, and I've seen like the direct impact of not being able to be married, the direct impact that has for gay couples. My mother's partner had breast cancer, and she was in the hospital, and my mother was not allowed anywhere near her. Technically, by law, she's nothing more than a friend, and I know that that was really difficult for them. The possibility of my mother's partner passing away from breast cancer, dealing with the hospital information and all that stuff. It was really important. It was really important for them to have the right to be recognized as any other couple would be, as far as, you know, heterosexual couples go.
It did make me think a lot about, you know, the whole legal system, you know, especially at that young age when I was trying to figure out, like, oh, I can't do that because it's illegal, but my mom can't get married because that's illegal, like, but she did and she should be able to, blah, blah, blah. Like, it really made me think a lot about, yeah, what kind of system we live in, and I don't know, definitely made me challenge it.
I never understood marriage in a religious sense, whereas, yes, it was like you got married in a church and a priest married you. It was about a choice that you made to join yourself with someone else.
From childhood on, human beings seek emotional security in established habit patterns, and the family habit is an essential one. The family as an institution has changed greatly. It may change even more, and its future is by no means determined. But it still carries out its essential functions: reproduction and the care and socialization of the young. As long as it maintains these functions, it will continue to flourish.
But I'm grateful for how I was brought up. I'm grateful for, you know, the two ends of the spectrum that I was able to see. You know,
if you're gay and you have kids, talk to them about it. Like, really, I think that was the one thing that, like, not to say that my mom did.
Talking about how those identities, all identities, happen within a context is really important, and our influence, you know, influenced by the social context in which they occur is really important.
Be open, I guess. You know, open is the best way to do. Try and go around things instead of through things, you know. Figure out, take time, listen. Everything that I don't do. Listening is important. Listen, world.